Thank you very much. I've decided to use this podium because I've seen everybody uses that podium. But there are two podiums in the house. I'm using this one for a change. Masters of Ceremony, Program Directors, there are two. Your Excellency, President Chelema from Zambia, thank you very much for coming. You will appreciate that when President Ramaphosa is not here and I'm here, I'm also doubling up as a president. I can't help that. Let me pay my respect to the Executive Mayor of Cape Town for hosting us. You know, Cape Town has a long history. There are very few people in South Africa who understand that inequality started here in the country. That is what is called the Cape Slave history. It started in Cape Town, and even General de Olmera, who colonized Mozambique, was killed here. Before 1652, which is known as the date of colonization, much earlier, he was killed here by the Khoi people. So it's quite an important city for us, for many reasons, not just beauty, and for its own history, which we don't talk about. Ministers and deputy ministers present here, I've seen many of you, and the Deputy Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources in South Africa, Phumzile Mgcina. I've seen some traditional leaders who have been invited to be part of the mining Indaba, members of the diplomatic corps, organizers of 2024 Invest in Africa Mining Indaba. Thank you very much for organizing it here in Cape Town. Captains of the industry, members of the investment community, you are the main reason that we are here. We can praise everybody else, but the reason that we're here is because captains of the industry and investment community must interact and invest in the African mining industry. And that's why we're here. So you're quite important to us. Leadership of organized labor, civil society, and communities, all distinguished guests that are present here. It is both an honor and a privilege to welcome you once again in South Africa for the second Investing in Africa Mining Indaba. I'm doing this on behalf of the country. The Executive Mayor of Cape Town did it for Cape Town. The chairperson of the advisory board did it for the organizers, and I'm doing it for South Africa. Big difference. So this mining Indaba convenes at a moment of profound global uncertainty. We may daft and pretend as if there's no such. We are witnessing heightened geopolitical tensions in the world, driven largely by competition of some developed economies seeking greater control over natural resources of developing nations. It's not our fault we have deposits here, but the great nations want to have control over those deposits, though they are with us. So we have a responsibility to protect them. If we discover copper in the Northern Cape, President, we have an obligation to talk to Zambia and DRC so that we don't flood the market and kill the price of copper unintentionally. Because it is not only us who is competing for copper. Latin America is very heavy on copper, and they're competing with us. So we have a responsibility to compare notes as the African continent. This dynamic represents a serious threat to sovereign resource-endowed countries, and the majority of which are here in the African continent. We are endowed with these resources. We are in Africa, we are in the poorest continent, though we have the richest deposits of minerals in the world. That is a contradiction. President, I said yesterday, this is not a function of resources, it's a function of leadership. We've given away our leadership and we've given away our role. We have given it to everybody else except ourselves. As a result, we are at the mercy of everybody else for our own resources. That must change. That must just change. It is therefore befitting that the theme of this year's Indaba is stronger together, progress through partnership, which means it's not only governments that must work together, we must work with the private sector. I know that in Africa, working with the private sector is like taboo because it is our resources, we must own them and we must run them. I'm a great believer of working with the private sector because together we can do more. Our resources can give us better results, but if we compete with one another, we are not going to achieve what we want to achieve. To us, this is not merely a slogan, it is a strategic imperative for Africa to act collectively. Speak in one voice, avoid destructive race to the bottom in our engagement with global powers investors. Let's not allow a situation where, when we talk with our colleagues from Europe, we talk to them as EU, but we talk to them as individual 54 countries. We're much weaker. My background is in the trade union movement. I know that when you are a worker alone, you are weaker against the employer. But once you form a union, at least you have a collective power to engage the employer. Same applies to the continent. This continent owes it to itself to unite, work together, talk to the outside world as one. It's a long way to go, but let's try it, let's give it a go. It is what we need most as a continent. It is in this spirit that we convened the second edition of the African Ministers Critical Minerals Roundtable. Critical minerals. And we are explaining that critical minerals have no universal definition. America defined critical minerals in terms of the role in the defense system. If you go to China, it's the role it plays in the technology. If you go to Europe, it's in the greening of the economy. And that goes on and on and on. In Africa, it should have a different meaning. And that different meaning is simple. Here, we need the role of the critical minerals on the economy. We need to talk on export earnings. We need to talk about it in terms of its contribution to development in the continent. And we have our own definition. That's why in our critical minerals, we are also having coal as one of them. In other continents, it's a dirty product. For us, it's quite an important product because it employs many people and it earns foreign earnings and it does many things in Africa. So we must not be following the fashion of others. We must assess the impact on our own continent. What does what mineral do in the continent? So that is going to help us. Actually, in 2025, in 2024, first of all, and in 2025, demand for coal has increased. Not in Africa, everywhere in the world, because though we write it off, its contribution is significant. Base load in electricity and many other roles. And it is more important now with the research, we discover that in coal, you find many other critical minerals, like your earth elements. You find it in coal and you get other critical minerals in coal. So let's pay attention to that. Let's invest in technology. Let's invest in science. Let's invest in innovation. If we do that, we're going to discover the usefulness of every mineral. And I've come to a conclusion that every mineral is critical. Every mineral is critical. So this thing of critical minerals is a nice to have, but a mineral is critical everywhere because everything you have here, you either grow it or you mine it. If you don't mine it, you grow it. If you don't do both, it will not exist. So it's quite important for us to have a partnership on critical minerals. Africa must talk with one voice. Our objective is clear: deepen collaboration, accelerate responsible exploration and mining, and ensure that Africa captures greater value of its own mineral endowment. We can make this continent a better continent. As per the consensus reached last year, our partnership must move beyond extraction to industrialization. We should add value close to the point of production. I had a fight with my president who is funding Africa, and I said to him, Lobito Corridor, we either see it as a competitor or we see it as a necessary complementary value addition in the continent. And if we do that, we must reduce pit to port. We must not take copper from Zambia to Angola for export. We must add value in Zambia so that copper is value added in Zambia. And when it goes to Angola to the port, it must be a processed product. That's all we're saying. And so that is all we're saying, because if we don't do that, we're going to be in trouble. I'm pleased to report that that this work has now been complete. The strategy is in place and the implementation is underway. Those who were in the round table of ministers got a copy of the G20 framework for critical minerals. Africa must use that framework so that it brings us together, it makes us understand one another, it makes us collaborate instead of competing. And this competition is what I call race to the bottom, because we give conditions that are attracting investment to us at a huge cost to our countries. Let's work together. As per G20 declaration, this achievement has not only shaped South African critical mineral agenda, it has also positioned Africa more broadly to assert greater control over its strategic resources. Central pillar of this strategy is the review of regulatory framework. Those who want our critical minerals must not find it easy to move from one country to the next and actually play us against each other. We must have a uniform framework that guides all of us in the continent. Then we are going to be able to compete everywhere we go. In exploration, for example, in South Africa, we have something called Black Economic Empowerment here. Many say it is driving investors out. It is not. It is an opportunity given to people who are excluded by apartheid from economic activity. But in exploration, we said we exclude people because exploration adds no value. You are looking for the quantity and the quality of minerals. Therefore, you don't need to carry a burden of a black partner. Do your exploration. At the point of production, we can talk about having a partner. And I can tell you that we have made a lot of progress in this regard. We have many black industrialists in South Africa. We're not talking much about it. We must talk about it so that the continent can understand that though we're the second last born, there's things that we're doing differently that can help the African continent. Well, the second last point, the only last point in South Sudan, everybody else is older than us. We learn from all of you. Now, the exploration fund for junior miners has been established. We put a total of 400 million rand. It's more than 2 billion rand now, because it is attracting attention of many people, and everybody is beginning to appreciate the fact that you will not have mining unless you do exploration. Exploration is the beginning of mining. If you don't do exploration, you will kill mining. So we have put money on that. We are still appealing to companies to put money in the exploration fund, because if we do that, we will be doing better in mining in the future. I can tell you that. I will give you a short summary of what we have achieved since the last mining in Indaba. You know, we have established this exploration fund. We gave 8 projects. Of those, 4 are ready for development of a mine. We're drilling for rare earth minerals in Bothaville, we're drilling for gold in Limpopo, and our people must just use this more and more and do more exploration. Now, it is quite important for the Council for Geoscience to do what they showed us yesterday, called virtual core library, where geological mapping is seen virtually. It gives more access to geological information, you get access to it, you can do more without physically going to Council for Geoscience. It is a virtual library. While our regulatory review process continues, we're encouraged by the ongoing investment sector. I don't know, between the last mining in Indaba and now, we've sunk 5 shafts in South Africa. We've sunk 5 shafts. 1 is in gold, 1 is in PGM, 3 are in coal, and people must just see the future of mining growing. 8 junior exploration projects have been given, 4 ready for a building of mine. 21 artisanal small-scale mines, more to learn from the continent. We are not experienced in this. We are a country of major and massive mining companies. All of a sudden, we're venturing into artisanal and junior mining. We can learn from the continent. And the continent must be ready to teach us. Because if we don't, that artisanal and junior mining is going to be replaced by illegal mining, where people do artisanal mining on their own, unregulated. So the continent must be ready to teach us as South Africa. I can tell you that we have granted 358 prospecting rights in this 1 year. And we have actually issued 32 mining rights. That is the interest that is shown because of the mining in Indaba in South Africa. Because people interact with one another and learn from each other. And I'm sure our administration is working very hard to improve our licensing system. And it is urgent, it is slow. Actually, we have discovered that the veracity of the information loaded determines the efficiency of the system. And that is making us slower than we imagined. So let me conclude by commending South African mining industry for achieving the smallest and the lowest mine fatalities on record. In 2025, we have reduced the number of fatalities in the industry to 41. That is a long way from 0 harm, but 41 is quite a good record for the industry to achieve as fatalities in the industry. It used to be a killing industry. We had a disaster in Keynote where we killed 177 people in one incident in 10 minutes. All of a sudden, for the whole year, 41. That's what we've achieved. I think we must commend the industry for that. The more we work together, the more we can reduce fatalities in the industry and make this industry safe. People must go and mine and come back alive. Thank you very much for all of you for being here. Please do interact with one another, invest more in the continent. This continent is great. This continent has a lot of potential. We must just invest. It will give us returns. We're not just begging for money. We give us money, you will get returns, I can tell you. It's quite a rich continent. Thank you very much. You are welcome to South Africa. It's a great mining destination. We continue to be one such destination. We're a mining destination. Thank you. Let me thank the President of Zambia. You are my counterpart today. Today, you are my counterpart. I'm the president for the duration of this meeting.
Thank you one more time to the Minister for the Republic of South Africa. It is said that human beings fear public speaking more than death. I don't have that issue. What I fear on stage is mispronouncing names and not keeping time. So in as much as I'd like to encapsulate and give you the highlights of the speech, I want to keep my job, and I'm just going to go swiftly into the next panel discussion. The topic for that is Beyond Symbolism, Government Industry Alignment in Practice. Now, we do have the founder and the host of Africa here, and now who will expertly moderate this panel. So please help me warmly welcome to stage Martine Dennis. A round of applause, please.
Madame Marie-Chantal, obviously your company has gone through a major development. 40% of your assets have gone to a US-backed consortium. How is this impacting, and again, the geopolitical rivalry, how is this impacting your strategic thinking about Africa?
First of all, I think that what is important to point out here is when we talk about geopolitics, it's also about the question of market, supply, and demand. Let's be honest. It's true that we want to change things in Africa. We have seen a video showing that Africa will be the one requesting all the minerals in the future. But today, unfortunately, most of the minerals are going in some certain jurisdictions. When we look at whether cobalt, especially cobalt and copper, most of the demand comes from China. As a company, we also supply Tesla, for instance, in the US regarding cobalt. So we are open, and we are open to what the market is looking at or seeking. And I think that that's where our governments in Africa should be looking at. And I'm going to take an example because I think that this was something that the DRC government did very well. For instance, regarding the price of the cobalt, it went so low at a point in time that everyone was losing. The government had to suspend all exports of cobalt for a certain period. I think that it was more or less 9 months. And they have today set some quotas to each of the companies just to sustain a price and the price. And I think that this is something that the government did for the benefit of the industry as well. And we were part of the discussion with the government, but it was as well a geopolitical type of issue. So as a company, we are open. We are open to do good business, responsible business. I think that that's what is important. And I really want to reinstate that the fact that let's not lie to ourselves. We live in a market where there is supply and demand, and that's where Africa maybe needs to start looking at things differently.
Now we really are running out of time, and my biggest challenge is stopping on time. So can I ask you both, Madame Mpumi and Madame Mana, if you could just be really, really brief, like 30 seconds, and give us the outline of how this is impacting your thinking. Madame Mpumi.
Okay, so from our perspective, I think back to what the chairperson of IFC said is we're there to run our business. But I do think it creates an opportunity for financing, first of all, because you do have off-take arrangements from both the US and China becoming available. And then there's also infrastructure development that gets stimulated with the superpowers vying for metal. So you have the Lobito corridor, you've got the Tazaria rail, that's now also being developed. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. In the end, industry wins, and the countries that benefit from these infrastructure developments.
Thank you, Madam Mpumi.
Thanks. I'm going to keep it short as well. Yes, there are challenges, but to everybody's points, I think we need to look for those opportunities. Within our own continent, we need to think about the speed of execution, because we know the challenges that we have. It's about execution in most instances. And then secondly, the whole idea of collaboration across the continent is key. So one of the examples is we always talk about beneficiation within the continent, but one cannot build the same things in all the various countries. So the key lies in the opportunity of looking at this in an integrated manner. And that's where the African Continental Free Trade Agreement comes in. And I think it's something that we need to capitalize on.
Thank you very much. Final 30 seconds to Minister Batashe.
No, my colleague from the DRC, it's not about their national interests. It's about the continent's interests. That's why it is important for us to Because if we have a strategy, for example, let's say we are subjected to a particular tariff regime and they are excluded from that tariff regime, that is divide and control. And we must be very much alive to that, ourselves in the continent. So the solution is, because we have an unpredictable tariff regime, diversification of the markets becomes the solution. That means what you use to sell to one area, you diversify your markets, you sell to various areas to cushion yourself from the risk of unpredictable tariff regime.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you all very much. And a round of applause for a wonderful panel.
The conference organisers have asked that you switch off the light. The conference organisers is distracting and stopping others from taking photos. Please don't switch on the spot. Please.
Please, another round of applause as our panelists make their way swiftly off the stage. Colleagues, if I could please ask us to make our way off the stage. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're now going to go into our keynote address. So could I ask everybody who's standing to please be seated? I'm going to ask us to please be seated. We do have a guest of honor in the house who's coming to give us a keynote address. So please help me welcome to stage the President of the Republic of Zambia, His Excellency Hakainde. A round of applause.
Yes, speak out.
Acknowledging the Minister, President Natasha. I do realize what you say, the acting president, I will not enter into those politics. But I acknowledge you and all that comes around you. I also want to recognize all the ministers that are here from different jurisdictions. This is mining in Indaba. I think Africa's premier mining in Indaba. So I know there are many countries that are here. So we recognize cabinet colleagues. Cape Town. Thank you, sir. I acknowledge the summit chairperson who has spoken already. Thank you, sir. Let me acknowledge our traditional leaders that are present amidst us here today, the hosts, the communities that host the resource endowments that this Indaba is all about. So we recognize you, Your Royal Highnesses, mining companies that are here, investors, and members of the diplomatic community that may be present, international organizations, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And If I left you out, I'm not against you. So you're all recognized. I see the world now is about who is for you, who is against you. I think we are together. We're one team. We all play different roles. And I think it's important to focus on complementarity rather than the differences, all competition. Some will say it's easier said than done. We can't do it. I think we are all challenged with these issues, but at the end of the day, you realize we need each other. Absolutely so. Let me acknowledge the speakers that have spoken before me. And they've all said good things. I think it's a question of piecing the story together. And I think that's what this Indaba is all about. And I want to offer my gratitude to our hosts and really for honoring us to be part of this year's Mining Indaba. Thank you very much. And I can confirm that this forum truly symbolizes Africa's shared aspiration for prosperity and transformative partnerships. We just have to look at that carefully and we'll see the window of opportunity that is there on our continent with regards to mining metals. I hear what Minister Mantashe said, that every metal, every resource is a critical resource. It's true. Every dining time in your house, you have cutlery. That's minerals. Switch on the light in your house. Ordinary conduct, daily lives. It's minerals. It's copper. It's other things. You want to take a plane, you want to take a train, you want to take an EV vehicle or fossil fuel driven vehicle, it is minerals. So, and many times we take these resources for granted until we raise questions about what are we doing in the ordinary lives. And you see that minerals facilitate our normal lives. Go to class, kids, technology, all of that stuff. Internet, all of that stuff. I think it's important that we acknowledge that. And I want to commend South Africa, Minister Mantashe, for your leadership in driving continental collaboration. I was listening very carefully to the panels here, to the things that the panelists had to say. But it is true that Africa must collaborate more. Yes, we have individual national interests. It's only logical, but it's a building block. So for us to be more successful, we have to collaborate, we have to work together. I'm convinced about that, and I'll say so a little bit. So, but talking about the theme, where we stand as Zambia, we totally agree that we're stronger together. I've already intimated on that. This theme captures Africa's reality, that progress requires partnership. We all have capabilities. We all have endowments. We all have skills, experiences, but they're not enough to deliver a total package for all our people, our economies, our continent, which is said to be the least developed, yet it's the most endowed. That's a paradox we have to solve, and I think we can do it together. Strongly believe in that. I want to remind for the organizers, just a memory bridging. At the 2022 Mining Indaba, I stood somewhere here. And I stood somewhere here, and as a newly elected president of our country, and shared our vision of our economic reconstruction. And mining stood at the center of that, of course, together with other things. I stood here. And 4 years down the road, I'm here to say to you, this is how far we've gone since I stood here. And I won't bore you, I'll run you through very quickly. And where are we going from here as a country? And Minister Mantashe, as a contributor to the Africa story. Zambia is a member of the Africa story and how it contextualizes itself as a continent in a global community, because we're a global village. It is clear that Africa obviously holds critical minerals. Now we know that minerals are all critical, and I think we agree. For ourselves, for the continent, but for the world. And I think it's important for the world to recognize that Africa has a lot to offer to the world's future, especially if you're talking about transition. And you know the transition I'm talking about. To be more greener. But we have to walk a path, not smooth, but one that needs to understand where we were, where we are, where we are going. So, we hold resources for the globe as well. Yes, resources create prosperity when unlocked through, once again, strategic partnerships because of the issues I talked about. Endowment, yes, skills, yes, training, experience, all of those are not enough. Because they're not enough, we need to work with others. I think if we are to come out of this year's Indaba here, we need to agree and take this issue of the need to work together. I listened to the African Finance Corporation Chief Executive, a colleague, and what he was walking through is exactly what we as countries must ascribe to. And then together with institutions like his and others, we can do bigger, better, bigger things. Because we are behind. Africa is behind. And only us should actually drive the agenda to accelerate what we're doing. Numbers, in terms of projects, but size of those projects as well. It's very important. So we can work towards closing the gap. And no one else will do it for us. We have to take the leadership. Others will support us. We think someone else will do it for us and we support them. That is not correct. We must do the things ourselves, take the leadership ourselves, then others will support us. It's easiest to support people with a clear vision of what they want, rather than those that are looking for somebody to solve their problems. I am not talking of exclusions. Africa is not talking of exclusions. Africa is talking of getting more organized so that we can be worthy partners with others in the global community. Well, there are many challenges we face as Zambia, as Africa, of course as the world. Market volatility, infrastructure, deficits, climate change. You expect me to say that, of course. But capital as well. You also expect me to comment about that, because you know that's the story. Adequacy of that capital, my friend, my dear colleague, but also important is the cost of that capital. We've been talking about the cost of capital for too long. And institutions like yours and others must lead the way as the institutions with the technical capability to lead countries, to lead this continent in moving towards not just mobilizing adequate capital, but also a fairly priced capital. And the discussion is very clear. The risk profiling of our continent, our countries and continent is not correct. And it makes us look inefficient. Same business, same sector, Africa pays a high cost of capital. And one of you here said we're importing inflation. This is one way of importing inflation straight, increasing the cost of doing business. So I think we know that we're challenged with those issues. We need to collaborate, Minister Mantashe, on addressing what my colleagues in business, the mining companies were saying, the market, demand and supply. So that's the more reason we need to cooperate as a continent to address the bigger block of colleagues that are stronger than us in responding to the market, demand and supply issues. Because otherwise, we'll be doing business at a loss as a continent. And the price is huge to pay. That includes instability on our continents. And instability will inject a negative business operating environment, which again will come back to the cost of capital and other things because of risk profiling. So we need to cooperate. Businesses on the continent must not always think of competition. As government should not always think of competition. We must think of working together. I think that's the theme of this endeavor. And we will find more joy, not short-term joy, but certainly a longer-term joy and success, growth in our economies, and provisions that are necessary for us to avail our populations. And I'll say a few of these things just about now. So mineral wealth, I must say, drive value addition when we do it properly. Despite these challenges, for us in Zambia, we've said our eyes are set on the trajectory of success. It does not matter what the challenges we face, because they're always there, they will always be there. But our eyes are set on succeeding with what we do. You heard the minister talking about targets we've set. First time in the history of our country where a government is setting targets, delivery targets, not in isolation with the business community, but working together with the business community, writing the story, setting the targets together is very important. Then we can walk and work towards specifics. I heard my dear colleague talk about intentional, deliberate deliverables, because we know they add value to businesses, to our economies, to our people. That is important. So, and if we agree to that story of success, it is imperative that value addition, for example, becomes part of the agenda items, not just by governments. And I agree with Minister Mantashe, but mining companies themselves, direct mining companies in the direct mining business, in support businesses, providers of goods and services, contractors, must share in this vision. Because when our countries succeed, the economies grow, that will inject more stability in the operating environment. And I think there's a vested interest there. That's what we have found out ourselves, and I think it's of universal applicability. There's no question about that being special about Zambia. There's nothing special. It is the way we should see things, and that's what I say as a servant of the people, that we don't have interest of the business exclusively without interest of the government and the government for the people. There is common interest. We're one economy. We must work together and find each other. That's an important theme in doing things. That is what we say. And then we have a chance to have a sustainable business that will not be disturbed by emotive behavior, that citizens can actually take a route of emotive behavior if they believe that businesses and government are not addressing their interests. Simple. Let me just give you a little bit of Zambia's reform journey. As I said to you, we were elected on the platform of reform. 2022, I stood here and talked about that. So, our reforms are anchored in stability, confidence building, given the conditions that we inherited when we took public office. Obviously, loss of confidence, conflicts all over, as you heard from the minister, even in the mining sector, and support businesses. Conflict, litigation, all of that stuff. So our job was to begin to build stability, confidence that we can do things together and achieve sustainable growth. We inherited, as the minister said, a declining economy, growing at minus 2.8% GDP. Not long ago, just 4 years ago. Now we are 4.5 years thereabout incompetent. And therefore, we launched what we called disciplined reforms. Clarity, discipline of execution, consistency. Very important. Now, these reforms are bearing fruit. There's no question about it. I say so to even my opposition colleagues in Zambia that in the private space, they appreciate and acknowledge the positive results of the reforms that we put in place. 4.5 years down the road, with great difficulties, debt burden, lawlessness, and so many things, underperforming businesses. As I said, Minister said, litigation all over the shore. It has to be intentional, it has to be deliberate. And I think that's what we're here to share with yourselves at this mining Indaba. We removed this business, as the minister said. Everybody who had an issue with each other in the sector, they went to court, not in Zambia, in London. And they were all traveling on the same plane, they don't talk to each other, and they only talk to each other in court in London. Unbelievable. Unbecoming behavior. So we called out that behavior. And today, we've reaped the benefits. Give you an example. Thank you. To give you an example, Konkola Copper Mines was in liquidation, en route to expropriation. And when we came in, before we came in, we said we will stop that expropriation and we will end the litigation. Today, we can say we've ended that and the business is back in production. Simple. Very complicated. Any one of you who understands insolvency, not just the law, but the practice, and I'm privileged to have done that in my private business, it's complex, it's emotional, and you have to have a dedicated, understanding and clarity of that to resolve such a problem. And today we're talking about maybe phase 2 of the transaction, and we know what that phase 2 is, clear. To raise more capital, to expand some of our rich resources. Konkola Deep, for example, for those who know the assets. Mopani was in comatose. I saw there was a Glencore team member here. Am I right? On the panel. Glencore, so many things in there, so many things in there. And we've been able to unravel that. And today, Mopani is contributing strongly towards the 3 million tons target. And this year, we will achieve the psychological mark of 1 million tons of copper this year. Never done before. There you are. We basically believe that, not believe that, just to confirm one aspect, that Zambia had a program with the IMF as part of our menu of reforms and restructuring. The Minister of Finance may say that at some point, but I want to indicate as part of the things we went out to resolve so we can focus on growth. And it affected the mining sector as well. We had a program, Zambia program with the IMF. Please take note, my colleagues, my fellow president, acting president, that Africa must change this narrative that the IMF will construct a program for us in our countries. We must construct the programs and ask the IMF to support us in our programs. And this president never shied away from the risk of being unpopular with the voters when we said this is the Zambia program with the IMF, not the IMF program with Zambia. And we maintained that narrative and made the IMF understand that. And we had a 38-month program. December, we concluded that program with 6 reviews and we passed all the reviews. in that 38-month program. Attitude, mindset. They weren't all easy, but we've done it. Now we're saying we want a program that supports growth, that supports the mining sector to do more, such as value addition. We don't want a program that talks about just fiscal consolidation, macro stability, and all of those things. I think we passed through that stage. But it's the country dictating, taking the lead on what we want, based on our vision. I think, my fellow president, that's our message at this Indaba to the continent. We're not saying we've done it correctly, but it was a painful process, including our debt restructuring. Took too long. We lost years. Other countries can pick positive and negative stories or aspects of our programs, both the debt restructuring and the IMF program, so they don't reinvent the wheel, so they can move faster than we, the guinea pigs, had to do at a greater cost and slow down to our own growth agenda. We're working on the ease of doing business, which is improving. Growth is up, no question about that, from minus to consistent growth. This year we are looking at maybe around 6.4% GDP growth, from a minus 2.8% not long ago. Arithmetically, mathematically, it means we are growing at a rate more than 6% because we came from the bottom. Inflation is coming down for the first time, entering the single-digit figures. When we took over government, it was 22% plus inflation. Now we've driven it down to single digits, and we'll continue pushing that. No question about it. So, I don't want to waste your time, but to say to you, for us, overall reforms are delivering, including reforms in the mining sector, as we have given you a few examples. Delivering what? Jobs, business opportunities. Very important for our people, small, medium businesses, as suppliers into the mining sector, as contractors in the mining sector. And we're now working on what we call local content. Working with the mining companies, negotiating with them, sitting with them, so we're going to have a shared agenda. We've been able now to legislate on local content. Initially, some mining companies thought that was intrusive. It cannot be intrusive. It has to be inclusive, not intrusive. One that will create business opportunities for local businesses without negatively affecting the performance of the mining businesses. When there's inclusion, there's a vested interest. When there's a vested interest, there's actually an insurance policy against negative behavior, such as expropriation intentions, as we inherited one case in Zambia, and we've been able to unlock it. That is the issue. And I like what the mine houses were saying here, that the old style of mining houses investing on the continent of Africa only for higher profits are gone. It's a partnership so that it can deliver returns to shareholders, to stakeholders, other stakeholders, suppliers of goods and services, but also to an ordinary citizen. For example, in Zambia, you hear people arguing in the opposition, of course, which is okay. We're happy with that mines don't pay taxes. But the truth is that we've been able to get the mines to pay more into the treasury. The finance minister is there. The single largest taxpayer in our country is a mine called First Quantum. And through that, we are able to support our programs, investing in education, free education up to grade 12. And we brought back 2.3 million children in school who were out of school before we took office. And where did we get that? Some of that money from the mining revenues. So who would then say they don't benefit from the mining companies? Who would say that? Which citizen or mother or father would say they don't benefit from the Zambian mining sector? There's none. Because they can see the benefits. That's just an example. So anyway, that's what we're saying. Jobs, business opportunities, growth, communities revitalized. 28 shafts in Luansha. Before we came into office, there was negative migration. Our citizens were leaving a town called Luansha. Through the reforms we brought, 28 shaft, dewatering, this year, mine production will start. Now we have the population going back into a depressed area. And we're doing infrastructure there. Minister is there from the Copper Belt. We have a program of road rehabilitation in there. Literally just bringing back a collapsed community to life. Everybody can see that. But mines are part of our partners in that reconstruction of communities. What should the investors know about what we've been doing? I've just given you a summary. Number one, just a few things. We are doing high-resolution geophysical survey for the first time in 50 years in our country. And we're doing it at a national level. And the government is paying for that. We did not want to go and ask somebody to assist us. We said, we walk the talk. We will invest in the high-resolution geophysical survey so that we can know what we're sitting on. And that should help businesses here and those that are listening to this delivery, that in some way we are de-risking, if you like, geological mapping. We're basically de-risking to some extent exploration, because now you can target areas. And we are about 55% through at a national level. And we'll be able to release this data, I think this year, later this year. And exploration budgets spend must increase. There's no reason that mines sitting here, and Minister Mantashe, you were right. Without exploration, we are injecting slow death in the sector because of the nature of mining. So there you are. So businesses here must see that there will be redefined mineral maps in our country. Ivanhoe is here. They've just taken a tenement in Zambia. So we're happy, proud that you've made that decision. We're looking for other investors in this hall to make those decisions, to come into our country. So, what else? Number two, we are building institutions. We had a weak base when we took office, institutional weaknesses. Yet those institutions are critical to the support of the industry. So we have strengthened the mineral regulation and governance overall, which was a weak area, very seriously weak area. The Minerals Regulation Commission, which was never there, is now up. It's now up, which will help us to streamline the approval processes. Very clear, make it very clear. The path should be very clear for any investor, but also root out inconsistencies, multiplicity of rules, procedures that creates some problems for investment and for the government. We continue to work on enhancing transparency and efficiency at all our facilitation areas such as what? Cadastre. Cadastre, very important. Those who are doing business in Zambia know what I'm talking about. So, we've now put in place the Mine Appeals Tribunal. It's now working. When people do business, there will be issues, there will be misunderstandings. But the procedure and the process to go through those misunderstandings is now clearer than they were 4 years ago. So we are happy about that. 3, what's happening to capital? How is capital responding to that? Tremendous response. Since I stood here 2022, capital has responded to these reforms, to these measures. A total of well over $12 billion has been invested since 2022 when I stood here in our country. $12 billion. Just to give you a few examples, Minister talked about first low-hanging fruit, brownfields that were in comatose. Just to give you a tip, First Quantum Minerals is invested in the Kansanshi mine, S3, $1.25 billion. $1.25 billion. Barrick Gold is Lumwana have invested in a super pit expansion, $2 billion. Mopani recapitalization, $1.1 billion. Konkola copper mines, I talked about it, $1.25 billion. Recapitalization. CNMC expansion in Rwansha, talked about 28 shaft, $1.6 billion, together with other facets of the investment. So, a mine that was out of commission, 28 shaft, for 23 years is back in production. Another mine that was out of commission for 47 years, Kalengwa mine, is back in production. That's the kind of stuff that is happening in our country. Greenfields, Cobalt, Mingomba, I believe the Cobalt guys are here, $2 billion plus with a huge discovery. Well, Ivanhoe, you are aware of that. And the important thing I want to indicate here is that this discovery came out of an existing tenement, an old tenement around Lubambe mine that was sitting there mining in a corner and never did any exploration in the rest of the huge license. We split the tenement and brought in the Mingomba project with technology, huge discovery, just next door. And I think that's a lesson for us at this Indaba, that when we have tenements as mines, can we explore the full extent of those tenements? Before you queue up asking for more tenements, can you explore on the tenements that you have? Because Africa, Zambia, Africa needs these resources. The world needs these resources. There you are. We have a mine in Mumba called Kitumba. Nobody ever thought that there would be a mine, commercial mine in a place like that. Now we're talking about 50 to 100,000 metric tons, contributing to our 3 million tons. First, 1 million tons this year. I can go on and on. It's not necessary. So that's how capital has responded. So the mining performance, to give you an idea, so we talk numbers. Numbers don't lie. In 2024, our production on copper alone went up by 12%. 12%. 2024. Last year, another 8%. We had a few issues with old assets. There will always be issues. So 8%. Now, we are on track, as I said, to 1 million tons this year. No question about it. Of copper only. We're not talking about cobalt. We're not talking about manganese. We're not talking about nickel. We're not talking about lithium. We're not talking about any of those, just copper alone. So that is what is happening in Zambia. What's the agenda ahead? Very quickly, triple copper production, as I said, 3 million tons. Scale value addition, talked about it already, for beneficiation. One mine project, FQM, S3 smelter, $115 million to do more value addition. Africa should not continue exporting raw materials as the main business. The mind frame must change. We've been exporting raw materials for centuries. For centuries. Including human beings. For centuries. Surely we cannot continue doing that. Surely it means we're not serious about what we're doing. Absolutely. So we must change the narrative. And that must happen together with the mining companies, because it's good for the companies as well. So we can grow our economy, so we can create more jobs, so we can create more business opportunities. Simple, straight. It doesn't need extra intelligence to understand that Africa needs to grow. And for us to grow, the mining sector sits at the center of this. And value addition is a key component, as my brother was saying what you're saying here. We can do this across the continent, not waiting in a sequential way, but in a simultaneous way. I believe in that. We need larger quantities of capital, as I said, a fair price of capital. That will allow us to grow in a manner that is sustainable. And it profits everybody when we do it that way. We have an issue in Zambia. All of a sudden, we're sitting on gold in every part of the country. All of a sudden. Even before our survey is completed. Local communities are digging up gold everywhere. So now, small artisanal mining is becoming a challenge as opposed to an opportunity, big opportunity. So we set 4 rules. I heard some of you talk about these rules. 4 rules, a booklet of 4 rules. 1, there must be legal mining only. We don't want illegal mining. Simple, straight. 2, we must mine safely. At the beginning, we observed a minute of silence, Mr. Chairman. Over what? Loss of lives. Minister Mantashe talked about the improvements in the sector here, loss of lives. We're losing lives. Young guys are going and creating rat holes down there, and they die. We cannot accept that. Part of the safety we're talking about is polluting the environment. Rivers, cleaning gold with mercury. It cannot be right. That should not be allowed. 3, we want to see formal and structured trading. Simple. Fair pricing, but also the resources coming into the economy. Rather than one country reporting gold imports from Zambia of $1 billion, but Zambia is only reporting $60 million. One doesn't have to be a rocket scientist to know what's going on there. So we need to bring this value in the economies. And that's why our economy is actually undervalued, partially. They're much bigger than what they're being reported. Again, my brother, that's an area you need to work on. African Development Bank, others, we need to work together on that issue. There are consequences of being described small economies when you're actually much larger, because of these informalities. And lastly, security. We in Zambia are saying we will not allow the mining resources to inject insecurity in our country. Guns, criminality. And we don't want to export insecurity from Zambia to our neighbors and then to the continent. It leads to ugly things. So I thought that these 4 rules must be spelled out here. Legal mining, 1, 2, safe mining, 3, formalities and structured trade in it. 4, insecurity must not be tolerated. We don't want rivers of blood. We don't want instability in governments triggered by this undercover economy, and then guns and other things. So I think it's important to indicate those issues. And as I stand down, really, we're focusing on driving green mining, no question about it, environmental protection. But Minister Mantashe, we want to build the regional value chains, not just look at Zambia's endowments and what we can do with other people, but what can we do with ourselves and the countries of SADC and the countries of East African Community, ECOWAS, and the continent as a whole. I think it's a clever thing to do. It's actually mutually beneficial. So it's very important that we indicate that issue. The issues, the corridors we've talked about, Lobito, Tazara for us, yes, we must not just move things. What are we moving? These are economic corridors. What are we moving? What form? What can we do locally? If not ourselves, with DRC. If not with DRC and Zambia, with South Africa, with Kenya, with Nigeria, with Ghana. What can we do together? I think this must be hot in our conversations. And then we can work into our shared visions, strategies, and programs, implementation. Let me close by saying women are important. We've already heard the story. Women are important. In the mining sector, women are important. They are the first line of core to benefiting a family, a community. So we want to see more women. And we're giving licenses to women. But licenses alone without the support mechanisms are not enough. And that's why what we want to learn from other countries. What have other countries done in that space? Happy to learn. We're stronger together. Partnership will drive Africa's transformation. No question about it. Africa should anchor the JVs, the partnerships on the continent. We're not saying alone, but even when we work with the East or West, we must anchor those JVs and structure them properly, that they benefit our populations as well. We recognize investor priorities, but we must also align the investor priorities with local interests. Very important. That's the job of government. But government also wants businesses to succeed. For my sins of the past, I come from that sector. And I don't see any contradiction. We work together for mutual good. Right. Let me say something because I touched on it earlier. We have the investors back in Zambia. We understand the importance of security of investment. We understand the importance of you retaining value to reinvest in our country and the continent. We understand that. And I stand here to say what I said in 2022. We do not support expropriation of investments. We don't support that. If there's an issue, we dialogue, rather than expropriation, which costs the business a lot, costs the economy a lot, including jobs. I thought I should say that to the investment group in this room today. We have a vested interest in each other. So it's a question of supporting one another. So, mining is about empowerment. It's about equity. It's about shared prosperity. Zambia is open for business. My minister has said Zambia is stable. What else? In this room, many countries don't have the financial regime we have. We have no exchange controls in Zambia. Absolutely no exchange controls. And I think that is important. As I said, we're stable, committed to continuing what we started. What we announced in 2022 here, we are continuing. We are walking that path. There's no reversal. But we're also open to advice. You believe that there's something we can do better, and we don't want to reinvent a wheel. We are amenable to advice from you as the private sector, and from other governments, and for us as Africa to learn from each other. I heard Minister Mantashe talk about that. We join you in that. Happy to learn. We don't want to lose time, waste time, cost us more money to design things that have already been designed elsewhere, and they're working. So we are here to say we are available to learn. Let us unlock Africa's promise for better opportunities for all these people, including young people who are dying in the Mediterranean there, seeking better opportunities. We can offer those opportunities on this continent when we work together. I think that's the issue here. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. So in a true mining Indaba